What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Fantasy Guru Elite Podcast NBA version. I'm your host, Jeff El Jefe, and I've got my buddy Thad with me. What's up, man?
It's all good, buddy. Good to see you as always.
Dude, you crushed last show. You crushed the first show that we did. You're coming up with these picks that I'm not even thinking about. Huge GPP picks, guys like Simmons. You had some more guys last show. It's just you're giving us all the GPP picks, dude.
Yeah, man. I pretty much dedicated myself to NBA being a year-round thing for me now. So I watch so much basketball now that for me, in order to get the puzzle pieces to fit, you got to know what all the pieces are. So and it just kind of makes sense. So just try to at least know who everyone is. And sometimes, it was just 2 nights, that's cool. Yeah. But it was a nice 2 nights. So hopefully we can keep it going.
Dude, we kept it up for you. Tommy and I did a game theory show yesterday, and we talked a little bit about the slate and went over the optimizer and the picks that it's spitting out. And dude, everyone won money last night. Everyone was hitting us up with their screenshots and everything, but optimizer crushed it again, dude.
Yeah, optimizer crushed it again, and I think I've got a pretty decent strategy. People out there have to do what works for them. And I think I'm not used to having such a great optimizer to kind of incorporate in part of my research. And it was like I was telling you guys with football, I'm trying really hard not to get spoiled and like have this thing mess up my research and me getting lazy. So what I'm doing now is I'm just doing all my research. And as soon as I feel like I'm ready to actually play, which is, by the time we start the show, I'll hit the optimizer and then just kind of take it from there. And there's always a bunch of guys on there that I either was considering, but just kind of put them on the side, or didn't even consider them for my radar. Like today, if I hit the optimizer, Justin Hamilton, pops up for DraftKings as a value center, and I wasn't even considering him. And then I went back and I did a little research on him, and he's certainly optimizer worthy. So the optimizer, man, it's good. I get it. People want the picks. They want to be able, it's like, they want to be able to print money by just logging them in. But this is something else, man. This is something that can really elevate your game if you dedicate yourself to learning a little more. So.
Yeah, yesterday was Nicholson. Tommy's like, the optimizer's saying Nicholson. What do you think about him? I'm like, I wasn't really thinking about him, but I guess he's okay. And sure enough, he goes off again. So
yeah, and then before that, it was like Jeff Teague.
Mm-hmm.
It's getting kind of it's freaking me out a little bit. But I mean, it's one of those things where I'm glad that we have it as opposed to somebody else having it. So I'm not complaining.
Exactly, for sure. So the thing I'm getting questions about today is the optimizer and the fact that Harden and Westbrook aren't in the optimal lineup on FanDuel. People are kind of questioning that. I question that a little myself. Westbrook and Harden are a couple of guys that I'm looking to immediately plug in cash games because of the high floor that they bring. So we'll get into that. We'll get into all the players that we like today. We're going to go position by position. I'll refer a lot to FanDuel, and then Thad can refer to whatever he's playing on today. I know he plays a lot of aces, so maybe we'll get some aces opinions today, whatever you want, Thad. But let's kick it off at the point guard position. I mentioned Westbrook already just there. A matchup against Phoenix here, a team that loves to play at a super fast pace. It's 12K, though. On FanDuel, he's 12K, Steph Curry's 9K. That's a huge difference. Of course, Curry has massive upside as well, just nowhere near the floor that Westbrook has in these matchups. So what's your approach with Westbrook? Is he a cash game guy right now, or are you going with the optimizer here?
Well, I mean, I think he's certainly a cash game guy. I think the problem comes up where it's one of those, it's not you, it's me sort of thing, where he's always going to be in play. But in order to make him work, you got to find some other guys that are in play at their, and that's not going to happen on every slate. Even with 10 games, things kind of have to fall into line. And in a bunch of cash game lineups that I came up with, and James Harden, but the guys that I ended up make them fit were guys like David West and guys that I just knew weight basically. So pivoting and really nice lineup that has neither one of these guys. The lineup I ended up with wasn't exactly the optimizer lineup, but at the same time, it's not like you got a bunch of scrubs in there. You got Kevin Durant and Paul George and these guys. So, but to answer your question, yeah, he's always cash game playable for sure. It's just tonight I couldn't make him work.
Man, yeah. I mean, I've got him in a lineup right now that works, but I can totally see it in cash game. We're trying to figure out where the value is mainly, right? We do want super high floors, but we can't just pay whatever price is there for these guys. So yeah, when you're talking about even just Curry versus Westbrook, it's pretty close, those two guys, what you'd project for their median score to be.
Yeah.
And paying $3K just for a higher floor. I'm going back and forth to see whether it's even worth it. And then, of course, that's just the two expensive guys. And you talk about some other value guys that are, going to put up much higher or have the potential to put much higher multiples than Westbrook would. But yeah, talk to me about some other point guards.
Yeah, and just kind of quickly, another thing for everybody else out there listening is that it's still super early in the season, obviously. As the season goes on, your lineup that you have at 5'10" could be completely different than the lineup you have at 7. News is going to break, and maybe some guys are going to come out that are going to allow you to roster and Durant, so. But just kind of going on today, right now, as of now, it's just kind of looking kind of weird, kind of hard to do. The guys that I like that are value guys are not guys like the other day we had like Sergio Rodriguez, guy was 3.2K. And they got some nice value, but it's not like that, The value guys that I do like are some of the guys we did mention from before. Frazier from New Orleans. He was starting, and I knew that he certainly was going to have a role in the offense more so as a facilitator, which is awesome because if you got, the Brow scoring 100 fantasy points, somebody's got to get him the ball. But I had no idea. The guy played 37 minutes versus Denver, which is ridiculous, and his price certainly didn't go up to reflect a 37-minute point guard. So I do like him a lot on both FanDuel and DraftKings as a value play.
Yeah, I mean, the Anthony Davis is dominating the usage there, which is concerning with point guards. But when a point guard is playing that many minutes, it's really hard for these guys to not reach value. We've talked about that with Ty Lawson early on in the season, another guy who doesn't have extremely high usage or anything, but is just on the court a ton. When you're bringing the ball up, you're kind of just going to fall into points. So I love Frazier tonight. He is one of the best value point guards, if not the best value point guards. You'll find him on my cheat sheets in my article that's about to come out. And, I love him quite a bit as well. Jeremy Lin is another guy that you can go to, is a little bit cheaper, is running that offense there in Brooklyn now. It's essentially going through him, so you're going to have a higher usage guy there. Quite a bit of upside in this matchup as well. Do you like him or anyone else at point guard?
Yeah, I like him. I like a couple of guys. Just like last time, it's the deepest position. Certainly, I think maybe tonight might be even more so than usual, just kind of based on position scarcity elsewhere. I definitely like Lin. Last game, he played 28 minutes, which shockingly, no one on Brooklyn, I don't think anyone on Brooklyn played more than 30. Maybe one guy or something, but a lot of the bench guys got a lot of time. So it's a little disappointing, but I think that's more an outlier than anything. So I do like Jeremy Lin a lot tonight. of course, Steph. I think three other guys that are on my cash game / value list. George Hill, time. He had a usage rate was a little over 25, which was great. The key for me with regards to Hill was he took 18 field goal attempts, which is anytime somebody's going to do that, then they're on my radar. So I do like him. He's actually a pretty good value on both FanDuel and DraftKings. Ish Smith did pretty well. Reggie Jackson's still out, and I think Ish is still in a good spot. He's pretty reasonably priced on DraftKings. And one guy that actually took me by surprise, I'm still kind of wait and see, but I'm not completely off of him, is Deron Williams. He came out and had himself a game. Granted, first game of the season, game went into overtime, but this is someone he's an old dude, and he really, I was really impressed. So he's somebody I'm keeping my eye on tonight.
That is the game with the highest projected total as well. I believe it opened up at 221.5. That game's projected to be close with the Mavericks 2-point favorites. You want a bunch of exposure to that Rockets-Mavericks game. Of course, we're going to be talking about Harden and some other guys, but yeah, Deron Williams, there's nothing wrong with that play. I think that most of the point guards in these really high-scoring matchups are the ones that I'm finding myself gravitating towards, with Steph Curry in a tournament, with, the other point guards in these really fast-paced matchups. So in regards to some other guys a little more off the wall, I think that Kyle Lowry is going to go a little bit under-owned, but he gets a matchup against Kyrie Irving, who is not the best defender in the world. So Kyle Lowry is a guy that I'm looking at in tournaments. Who else do you like? Anyone else?
I like Kyrie, but not as much as I did before, just because, going up against Toronto, backcourt certainly deserves a lot more respect than going up against the Knicks. So, granted, he had a usage rate that was pretty nice, 31.1 in the last game. So, but with the other options that we mentioned, and I'm trying to really make a nice balanced lineup. If I'm not going to use Westbrook, he didn't make the cut for me today. But he's someone that I always have my eye on. The thing I have that maybe you can give me some input on this is that for Lowry, and I know it was just one game, I saw that his usage rate was pretty low, lower than what I expected.
Well, that was because DeRozan scored 40 points.
Yeah. Okay.
So now it's a little tougher matchup for DeRozan. He'll probably see some LeBron, and you figure, okay, well, if DeRozan's usage and everything is going to go down, of course, where is that going to go? It's always to Lowry. Valanciunas is going to have a pretty good season, I think, catching people off guard. Talked about that in the NBA preview show a little bit and in the opening night, I think. So, but I do like Lowry quite a bit. I'm trying to think if there's anyone else that I would mention. I would consider using Kyrie Irving in a tournament. Talked about last show with you. I think that this could just be a great spot for him to improve as a player overall after his performance in the finals and everything. Maybe he takes that leap into that next tier of players. So I'd certainly consider him. I think you mentioned Jeff Teague quickly. That's another guy that I have some interest in. Kemba Walker, did you mention him yet?
I didn't, and he's on my list in terms of my notes. It's just I haven't pulled the trigger on him yet. He probably is a guy that's kind of in the middle in terms of when I project from him and his value. If he were projected higher, I'd probably be on him a little more. If he were a little cheaper, I'd be on him a little more. Right now he's kind of in limbo, so he's not really on any of my teams, but I do like him.
Yeah, I believe that he's kind of gotta end up that way where people just, disregard him for whatever reason, and he's going to be super low owned. I believe he's one of the most underrated players in all of basketball. So I want a little bit of tournament exposure there. Of course, as we're mentioning, these last few guys, these are the guys that we're less and less interested in, but kind of want to cover as many guys that are in play as possible, just for those people that are building multiple lineups. To sum up the position, though, before moving on, I'll say that I do have quite a bit of interest in Westbrook in cash games. Tim Frazier is probably the best value play for me. And then I'm going to be looking to guys like Lowry and Walker, and maybe Lynn to sprinkle in tournaments. Can you sum up the position for me with your favorite guys, Thad?
Yeah, I think in terms of overall points, of course, I love Westbrook. I think the gap in terms of price between Westbrook and Curry is a little greater than the potential gap in terms of their overall production. So certainly don't have a problem pivoting down to Curry. But I do agree, Frazier's probably my top value play with Jeremy Lin and George Hill, not too far behind, especially on FanDuel. And other just kind of tournament pivots, Ish Smith, Deron Williams, and we mentioned Kemba.
All right, so that sums it up. Let's move on to shooting guard. What do you feel? How do you feel about the fact that FanDuel has James Harden listed as a shooting guard? Do you like that or not? Because right now he's playing point guard. In his first game of the year, he set a career high in assists. While Patrick Beverly is out, he's obviously the point guard. Do you like the fact that we can use him at shooting guard, or is that annoying?
I think the jury's still out, but I think tonight I like it a lot because there's such a huge gap between him and the next shooting guard. I mean, it certainly helps when it comes to position scarcity, and also at the same time, you're not getting him for free.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some game theory in there as well. It's much easier to roster two cheaper shooting guards, even though Harden's available. So do you want to kind of go contrarian to pay up? And for me, most of the time, the answer is yes. So he's going to be in my lineup. Like I said, I'm trying to do the Westbrook Harden tough. I think I'll make it work by the end of the night, just kind of based on what will happen. But to answer your question, yeah, I like him on FanDuel a lot as shooting guard.
I think that it goes from there to about that 6K range, whereas like that's where everyone comes into play, right? You've got Rodney Hood, Klay Thompson, you've got Devin Booker, Evan Fournier. Like those are all guys around 6K. Who stands out to you in that group? Do you agree with me? Do you think that is the range that you'd want to go with your shooting guard number 2 or what?
Yeah, that's definitely the range for me. I think the guys that are above that range, some of those guys are projected higher, but I'm still not really feeling it. Like, for example, Victor Oladipo and DeMar DeRozan are guys that are priced higher. Maybe if you look at projections, they're projected higher, but they don't fit my lineup very well at all. I think Rodney Hood is a phenomenal play for me, especially on FanDuel. He's another guy, we talked about for Utah. George Hill took 18 field goal attempts. Rodney Hood took 17, and a ton of those were three-pointers. He took 7 3-point attempts, which I'm all for that, especially as a shooting guard. So he's someone that I really like to pair up, preferably with Harden. One guy that, I'm trying to get over it's not even recency bias, it's just bias in general for shooting guard is on both FanDuel and DraftKings is Dion Waiters. He's a guy that not just last year, but for as long as I can remember, we've been dumping on him and he's been taking the crap on us too from a fantasy standpoint. But, he's in a new environment. I know it's only been one game, but he played like almost 34 minutes last game. He had, didn't have an Anthony Davis-like explosion, but he's a guy that, he was versatile, and at a cheap price tag. He's someone that, I'm willing to throw in there to see if I can make him work in my lineup. It just makes me uncomfortable, man. I don't know. What do you think?
Oh, man. You're throwing out a guy, like you said, that we just have learned to not trust, as we've been trained, like, you don't go to Dion Waiters. But, like you said, this is a new environment, new situation. He was not completely on my radar, to be honest, because of those biases probably, so I'm probably wrong. I probably need to revisit that, remove those biases, and then reevaluate. But like when I did my cheat sheets and in my article, I don't have him mentioned, and you're making me question whether or not that was a mistake. I do love that 6K range, like I mentioned. I think that Fournier stands out as just an elite option for me tonight. We saw, I believe it was DeRozan against Detroit that went off in this matchup. Someone went off against Detroit in this matchup. So it's just another good spot where you're thinking, man, you're trying to identify spots early that a guy can go off in. And Fournier is the guy that benefits the most, of course, with Victor Oladipo leaving town. So love him. Then you've got the shooters that we talked about in their previous games, and Klay Thompson and Devin Booker, very shooting dependent guys that take a lot of deep shots. And we talked about are decent fades when they're chalky options because if the shot's not falling, then they're not going to put up huge games because they don't do a lot of stuff in the peripheral areas. So tonight they're a little less chalky than they were in their previous games. So I like those guys a lot for their upside. Out of those two, which one do you like better?
I think I'm going to go with Klay. I think you hit it right on the head in terms of them. They're less chalky, but they're actually better positions than they were before. You know, we spoke before. Anyone playing New Orleans is in play. Usually, you know, we'll see how this works out this year. But last year, when Golden State was involved in blowouts, Klay was one of the guys who was like one of the last guys to get off the floor. So if that still holds true, then he's still going to get a lot of opportunity to put up a lot of shots, make a lot of shots. So, and I think based on his performance from on Wednesday or Tuesday or whatever, people aren't going to be on him as much. So I do like him a lot.
That's a good point too with his rotation because his rotation is to come in either late in the third quarter or early in the fourth quarter. So by then it's like, you know, you can't assume that you've already won, right? Whereas Steph Curry is coming out at the end of the third quarter, and they have to put him in halfway through the fourth. So for him to get his final run, it's got to be the very end of the game. So really good point there in regards to the rotation. And that's kind of one of those things that, you know, guys like us are paying attention to, trying to figure out where the edges are, right, when we're looking at blowouts and who's less blowout prone and those sort of things. But very good job there. Who else do you like?
I think someone that I had my eye on, this just kind of goes back into the whole bias thing, was Monte Ellis. You know, going up against Brooklyn, he shouldn't have any issues at all. He did play 44 minutes last game. So, you know, another older guy. The only thing that I was disappointed in last time was he only took 11 field goal attempts. So he's usually someone who doesn't have problems shooting. And so that was a little bit of a disappointment, but I think he is someone that's on my radar still based on his price as well. But it's really mainly those guys. You know, I got a lot of Harden love, got a lot of Rodney Hood, and just kind of hanging out in that 6K neighborhood with guys like Klay Thompson.
Did you mention Matthews at all?
I did not. I wanted to see what you thought about him. He's another guy who kind of reminds me of Kemba, where, you know, I got him written down, but when it's all said and done, I didn't really use him anywhere. Is that a mistake, or just kind of?
It's just I'm trying to identify the really low-owned guys that you have upside. You know, same thing with Kemba. I literally wrote them up in my off-the-radar section in my article. I think that there's a decent amount of upside for Matthews, considering the ownership level that he's going to be at. We talked about the over-under in that game, the total in that game, 221.5. Like, I want exposure. I'm trying to figure out how to get exposure that in ways that other people aren't going to. Everyone's going to have Harden. Like, he's one of the first guys you plug into your lineup, or at least I am. And the optimizer's not saying to, but the way I see it, I want Harden, and you just kind of go from there. But getting Wesley Matthews also, like, most people aren't going to have both shooting guards from that game, or two shooting guards. Right. I guess you could also go Gordon too, but that's kind of my thinking there.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea because I hadn't really considered the whole pairing thing. I think in the last show I mentioned how one of my experiments is to pair up Harden with Gordon. So that kind of left Matthews as the odd man out. So I don't think he'll be heavily owned, but he certainly has a lot of upside, GPP winning upside, as a matter of fact, to kind of help contribute to that. You touched on the optimizer who actually likes Kentavious Caldwell Pope. And he's someone who wasn't even on my list. So, I've had a number of guys that have given me a lot of, when I X them out, I end up regretting it. So is that somebody that you think is worthy of keeping or Xing? I mean, I want to,
man, let's X him out.
I'm going to have to X him. I'm going to have to X him. And this is just a situation where if you beat me with KCP, then you just got to beat me.
What's the problem? Yeah. People don't usually beat you with KCP. The dude plays a ton of minutes and everything, but it's really rare that he puts up a game to you're like, oh, man, I wish I would have had him. Like, he doesn't kill you quite often, but he rarely has that huge game. So I'm with you. Like, I think we can just X him out. He had a disappointing opener against the Raptors, 11.5 FanDuel points, 4 actual points. Like, you're going to see a few of those games from KCP, but I do like the way the optimizer is computing there with the minutes and everything. This matchup is a solid one with the defense against Evan Fournier. So I get it. I totally get it. It's just with everyone else in that range, that 5 to 6K range at shooting guard, I don't see how you can go that way. And if it's an ownership thing, thinking, oh, well, I'm going to get him at lower ownership than the other guys. Okay, but like you want high upside, low ownership guys. You don't just want low ownership guys. So,
right. Yeah, because like we said before, like the guys like Clay and those guys, nobody's going to have those guys. So I'd rather have Clay at a tiny bit higher ownership than KCP because it's not going to be a significant amount as far as I'm concerned. So now I'm telling you, if KCP goes off tonight, I'm turning off Twitter. I'm turning on the Hallmark channel. I'm turning on the Golden Girls, brother, and I'm not even gonna look because it's already freaking me out with some other stuff. If the optimizer hits on KCP tonight, I'm going to call the FBI, bro, because this is some space age technology. So I'm going to X him out.
If KCP gets over 30 FanDuel points, then I mean, we almost can't even doubt it ever again, right? Because it's like
I can't. I'm gonna have to get lazy. I'm gonna have to get lazy. I'm gonna have to start just seeing what the optimizer says and then do my research kind of in reverse based on what the optimizer said. So he's the guy that I got my eye on tonight, just for the sake of the optimizer. If he breaks 30 FanDuel points, it's something is up. Some witchcraft up in this month.
I'm gonna be sweating this one out just for pride's sake, But
yeah, you and me both. But granted, the 1% of people that have him will be happy, but I don't think it's gonna be much more than that. So
exactly, and we'll be able to make up that point.
Yeah, we'll be all right.
So
the words that have never come out of my mouth are no KCP, no cash. I've never said that. So we'll see. I don't think tonight's going to be the night, but we'll see. We'll see.
So yesterday I built a cash game lineup, loved it, ended up running the optimizer, trying to see, okay, how close am I to the optimized lineup? Ended up being we had 2 players different. So I was like, that's reassuring. I was like, oh, awesome. The math backs up the guys that I'm going after. Heads up, the optimizer outscored me by a point last night. Everyone swept everything. Like anyone who used the optimizer last night on FanDuel just swept all their cash games and everything, and even really scored highly in tournaments. DraftKings, I think it was more about when you ran the optimizer. Some people had success, others didn't.
Yeah.
But FanDuel, like if you ran it from like an hour to lock or sooner or closer lock, then you just absolutely crush. But it was interesting. I always am comparing my lineups now to the optimizer and seeing.
Me too.
How good I am, especially in cash games, But all right, let's move on to small forward. This is an interesting position because of guys like LeBron James and Kevin Durant. LeBron James, one of the best cash game plays all season, I think, is how he's going to be. That's how he was last season. He just provides such a high floor with being able to do so many things in terms of categories, statistical categories, right? Like if his shot's not falling, he's going to get a bunch of assists and rebounds, and he has block and steal upside, and it's just he ends up providing a super high floor. But I like Kevin Durant quite a bit more tonight. We get the Warriors coming off of a huge disappointing game, huge disappointing opener.
Yeah.
Durant's 9,300. He's a little cheaper than LeBron. Super aggressive. Again, we saw him super aggressive in the opener. Another good matchup for him here. Look at the wings that the Pelicans are throwing out there. I mean, it's like Solomon Hill, and it's
garbage.
It's no one that can stop
garbage.
Durant. They're not going to try and put Anthony Davis on Durant, and even if they did, like, I will take Durant 100 out of 100 times in that matchup. So give me all the Durant, man. Maybe even in cash games over LeBron. What do you think about that? Is that crazy?
Yeah, I think that's not crazy to me, especially now that the prices have kind of flip-flopped and you're actually paying a little less. Durant has been aggressive, and that's never going to change. I don't think that my main interest in this game, in terms of other than being a fan, from an observation standpoint, is the rotation, how they're going to use him in the rotation. Because whenever he's on the court, he's going to be killing it. There's no question. I'm just curious as to how they use him with Curry, because I can only anticipate that after the opening night, they're probably going to change things a little bit, because it's not like they just kind of lost by a little bit. I mean, they need to change something if they want to stop. New Orleans is not going to embarrass these guys, but you don't want San Antonio having your number this season. So that's what I'm curious about. But Durant, man, he is a guy who he's in that lineup where I couldn't fit Westy. So, different team, but same, mentality. So I do love him tonight. So one thing you mentioned about LeBron is that when people are doing their research on him, they kind of have to think about him completely different than everybody else, just because he's so versatile and he's a weird player. He gets better as the season goes on, to the point like where when playoffs start, he's in a gear that doesn't exist for a lot of people. So right now, I think it's a good opportunity to take advantage of Durant and those guys. And as the season goes on, then kind of jump onto LeBron after All-Star break. I'll jump on LeBron.
Sure. And it's interesting too, because Cleveland is going to be resting guys a lot more than they did in the past. They've been open about that. So you could see you're going to see LeBron in spots that are absolutely unfadable, where it's like Kyrie and Love are out, LeBron's playing. It's going to be the LeBron show. It'll be super obvious that you have to play LeBron. But I'm with you. Like early on in the season, when all three of these guys are healthy, you don't have to play any of them. All three of them went off in the opening night. That was a ring ceremony night. There's a lot of other stuff going on that could have been motivating factors. But that said, I still do like LeBron for now as a cash game play early on in the season. I think as we see it become, mid-season and later in the season, that's when they'll really start to reduce his minutes and stuff. But for now, he's super safe to me. Who else do you like in the position?
I like Paul George. He's a guy who always has been and always will be someone who's like an optimal tournament guy. Nobody ever thinks about him just because from a talent and pricing standpoint, he's usually sandwiched in between a whole bunch of other guys that are a little more popular. So I do like him. One guy that I talked myself out of last game that I'm going to talk myself back onto that we spoke about is Harrison Barnes.
Okay.
Before, I mentioned to you that he had a really bad preseason. I mean, really bad. And in my mind, he's a guy that just really was never going to take it to the next level. But somebody talked to him, obviously, in between preseason and the first game of the season. I guess that happens when, the guy got a 4-year, $94 million contract. So I'm pretty sure they were like, look, you need to go out and handle business. And he certainly did. So he's a better value on FanDuel. I still think he's going to be completely under-owned, because when guys go for so many years kind of without doing anything, it takes a lot more than one game for people to kind of be on him. So he's certainly on my radar. My ultra I'll say ultra sneaky value guy that I was on. First game that I'll be back on is T.J. Warren for Phoenix. It started off in the preseason or early preseason as them expecting it to be the PJ Tucker show. Then he hurt his back, and then T.J. Warren came in, and P.J. Tucker got sent to the bench. And now P.J. Tucker's even on the third team now. Coach came out, and Earl Watson came out after the first game and said, you know what, this ain't working. So I think now that T.J. Warren doesn't really have anybody breathing down his neck, he can play a little more comfortably. Played 30 minutes versus Sacramento. Took 14 field goal attempts, which is pretty good for a guy at his price. So he's someone that I do like a lot as well.
What do you think about Aaron Gordon? He played 35 minutes in his first game. He is a super high upside guy to me. If he's going to be playing 35 minutes, I feel like he's got some of the highest upside on the board per dollar.
Yeah, I agree. I agree as well. I actually might have him. I think I actually have him higher than T.J. Warren in terms of combination of value and ceiling. He took 11 shots last time, and for him, he's a guy that you can't really focus on the number of field goal attempts because he's a guy that makes things happen. He's incredibly athletic, so he's just kind of there when he needs to be there. He's not a facilitator, and he's not someone that kind of stands still long enough to really have you pass him the ball. But 35 minutes was awesome because I remember last year, that was one of the most frustrating things about him is that you didn't know if he was going to get 35 minutes or if he was going to get 28 minutes. And the 35 is certainly optimistic, so I do like him.
All right, yeah, I'm not quite there yet with Harrison Barnes. You make good points. He did look fine in his last matchup. Maybe it's the Warriors bias coming out in me being super frustrated with the guy's career, but I'm going to still wait a little bit longer on Harrison Barnes, but I totally back up that he's like, he's not a crazy play today or anything. So Justice Winslow is just another guy in that range that I find myself using instead. I don't know if I'm not 100% confident that's the right thing to do. It's just that he's a guy I trust more. And you look at what he did against Orlando in his first game. He played a bunch of minutes, scored 34 fantasy points. Like the dude he was a rookie last year, is a defensive-minded guy, but if he's going to take 15 shots now, which is what he did against Orlando, like if he's going to even come near that every once in a while, then that's a ton of upside. 15 actual points, like that's about what we'd expect total fantasy points from him last year. But what are your thoughts on Justice Winslow?
I think he's a much safer play. I think the difference between Winslow and guys like Harrison Barnes and Dion Waiters, and like we're talking about guys like Waiters and Barnes, they're in completely new environments and completely different situations. So the success that they've had over one game, it might stick like it might not. But for Winslow, what we saw from him is what the Heat wants to see from him. With all of these other guys gone, he might not be the number one or number two scoring option, but he's going to be in the mix. He's going to be a guy that is in some way, shape, or form going to help facilitate or help that offense out. If he's not scoring, it's either with rebounding or assists or whatever. So I think that his fantasy points, he had a pretty decent amount of fantasy points, which will fluctuate. But I think that role that we saw, that's what we're going to get. And so I like him a lot. I don't have a problem using him in cash games actually because he's going to be pretty steady over the season.
Anyone else you want to mention at the position, or you want to move on?
One guy that I'm in the wait and see, but I was pretty impressed was Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. He had 35 minutes versus Milwaukee, had 18 field goal attempts, and his usage rate, he had more shot, which is not going to stick, I don't think, because he had more shooting field goal attempts than anybody else on the team. His usage rate was like almost 25. If for some reason that holds, like I said, I don't think it is, but if it does, he's going to end up having an awesome season, and it's someone that you might want to jump on sooner than later. But for now, I'm just in observation mode for him.
All right, let's move on to power forward. Anthony Davis with the absolute ridiculous performance, man.
Dude.
I can't, like I wrote him up in the cheat sheets. I didn't mention him in my article. And then afterwards I'm going, man, like, was that a mistake or what? But it was just that I felt the opportunity cost for, I think it was Westbrook and Harden on that slate again. Like, those were the guys I wanted. Anthony Davis was a great option. It's just he wasn't going to end up in many of my lineups when Westbrook and Harden are on the slate. That said, my my main GPP lineup ended up being a Denver Pelicans stack. So Anthony Davis ended up in my main GPP lineup just by chance because it was a stack.
Right.
So I got a little bit lucky there. But should I be focusing on Anthony Davis a lot in my tournament lineups tonight against Golden State?
Well, I mean, I don't think you need to focus any more or less, to be honest with you, than you did before. We mentioned in the earlier show that, especially for me, as long as he's healthy and playing, he's got the craziest amount of upside in the world. So he's someone that I like. I think same situation applies. It's not like he's this 5K guy that everybody's going to have. Sure, he's going to be on everybody. You can't go score 100 fantasy points and not end up on everybody's wish list. But he, at the same time, if you want Westbrook and there's Harden out there and LBJ, there's a lot of guys out there to pivot onto. So I'm not really worried about ownership and stuff like that. Is he going to get another 100? He might. He might. That's the thing. He might. Is he going to come out and trip on over his shoelace and break his tibia before warmups? He might. Yeah, that's probably more likely. So he's a guy where I'm glad I lucked into having him because of this game stack, like you said before, and he really did me well. But it's status quo for him. Nothing's changed. Same thing as before.
Yeah, I don't like him as much as Harden and Westbrook again. So,
same here.
Maybe I'll be wrong, but the optimizer likes him more, apparently. He's the guy that the optimizer is spending up for, which, I imagine the data looks pretty good for an optimizer right now after what Davis just did. So I'm not surprised that he's plugged in there, but I'm not saying he's a bad play. I'll probably have some Anthony Davis exposure. It's just that I like Westbrook and Harden more. I'm going to have more of those guys. I like Durant more too. So
yeah, me too. Yeah, nothing's changed. Same story.
It's super scary saying that. Like he's your fourth favorite option.
I know.
But
yeah, he was my fourth favorite last time. It was Westbrook, Harden, Boogie, and then him. Same thing. Same thing.
I really like Thad Young. He's got a revenge game today against Brooklyn in Brooklyn for the Pacers tonight. We love revenge games in basketball because you can control your own usage. You can control whether you're going to pass the ball or shoot the ball. You control your opportunities. So I do think that is going to be a little more aggressive tonight. $6K on FanDuel, to me, that's an extremely reasonable price for a guy that played, I think, 34 minutes in the opener.
Yep, I agree. I think that's a great price. I think he'll be very low owned because, between people wanting a piece of Anthony Davis and then, people who like myself who had click the X and had remorse with a guy like Draymond Green, especially in the same game, those two guys are going to be on a lot of lineups. The thing that I like about Young especially is, there's revenge games and then there's guys who are notorious for taking advantage of their revenge games. And when he had his revenge games against Philly, he came to play. So I have no doubt that this is gonna be a true revenge game for him as well. So I'm gonna definitely do what I can to get him in my tournament lineups.
He's not even the only one with a revenge game. We've got Tobias Harris.
I know. Right? Yep, Tobias. And speaking of Tobias Harris, he's another dude. He played 36 minutes against Toronto and was the high scorer on the team, which against Toronto it means something. It's not like he was playing a bunch of slouches. So yeah, he's a guy who's got revenge as well. So I do like him a lot as well. So
Talk to me about some other guys.
Another guy that worked out well. We were talking about pairings last time, and last game I did a pairing with Enes Kanter and Adams, Steven Adams for OKC, and that worked out pretty well. You know, Kanter's a guy where people will look at those minutes and go, "Oh, the guy played 24. That's not really sustainable." It is for him.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, that's the regular for him. So, you know, he took 14 field goal attempts, which is awesome. So when he's out there, it might not be for 30 minutes, but he's shooting the ball when he's out there. So I love him tonight, especially like on FanDuel. I think he's one of my top plays for FanDuel, definitely, as a matter of fact. So I like him. Let's see. We talked about Draymond, who more without doing the walk of shame. I mean, it's like, damn. So yeah. So if the optimizer shows him, I'm gonna stick with him. One thing I think we need to at least kind of note or mention is Derek Favors is probable tonight, or at least last time I checked. I don't have him in my lineup, so I'm not a huge fan of rostering guys their first game back from an injury, even if it is just their second game. But he's someone to keep an eye on. And Tobias Harris. Let's see. One more guy that I think I'm going to keep an eye on that I was high on before, but his shot just wasn't falling, was Serge Ibaka. He did play 36 minutes, and he took 17 field goal shots, which is a lot. Probably most he's ever taken. Yeah, I don't think he's ever taken that many before. So if he's going to do that, then I'm cool. I'm cool with him. I guess him not exploding. If he only made 30% of his shots, so if he made even more than half of them, his price would be through the roof by now. So I'm kind of glad he didn't make those shots. But he's someone who hasn't fallen off the radar, so I advise people to kind of keep an eye on him.
I'm with you, dude. Yeah, that's another guy you just kind of have to go back to the well with. He even on FanDuel, like he pretty much paid off, and he could have had a huge game. He just got off to a super slow start, so everyone went into panic mode. Twitter starts going crazy, like Ibaka, you're killing me, like those sort of things.
Right.
And
yeah, that's good though. Yeah, that's good. I like that. I like that. That works out in my favor very frequently. So.
Exactly. Yeah. So he finished fine. Like he ended up with a good second half, and I like him again here tonight. You mentioned Kanter as well. Another guy I wrote up. A lot of these guys I'm writing up on both of their first games, and it's like, guys, I promise I'm gonna differentiate my recommendations, but early on, it's ended up that a lot of the same guys I liked in their first games, I liked in their second game too, and that's the case with Enes Kanter. Extremely blowout proof because he plays a lot of garbage time minutes for them, and he's very aggressive with those minutes because a lot of times it's with Westbrook not on the court, so he's able to take quite a few shots. And he actually plays pretty well with Westbrook as well. So I love Kanter. I love the revenge games for Young and Harris. Young's more so than Harris, but I think Harris is in play as well. And the other guy I'll mention is Kevin Love. He was a guy who kind of surprised me in his first game. Wasn't expecting a ton from him. Only used him because it was a short slate and there weren't a bunch of power forward options. But now, and I even mentioned I'm probably not going to use Love on the bigger slates, but here I am in a bigger slate talking about Kevin Love. Should we use him or not?
I think we certainly can. I think before the mentality that we've had up until now is still in play, where usually I'm on him if Kyrie is out or if LeBron is out. But you said it yourself last game. All three of these guys went well, so and that happens, So it's not like you have to use one or two and exclude the other. So, but people also have this mentality of him kind of they want that Kevin Love from Minnesota all the time, and he's still in there. It's just don't expect it all the time, which makes him a great tournament option because you could get it tonight if you play him. So.
Absolutely. Is that it for the position, or are you ready to move on?
Yeah, I'm good because we got a couple of minutes left and we can hit center and knock them out.
Sounds good. So at center, the guy I like a lot is Andre Drummond going up against the Magic here. Vucevic, we talk about how offensive-minded he is, which is good for DFS, but he doesn't play any defense. The coaching staff is really frustrated with him because he doesn't play defense. Andre Drummond is, I imagine, going to be pretty aggressive in this matchup. We've seen that when he plays against Vucevic, him go for 60-plus fantasy points, and I think that's the upside I project him for again here tonight. So I'm gonna have a bunch of Drummond. What are your thoughts on that? Is that a guy we can spend up on?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially like on a site like DraftKings. His price on DraftKings, he's really inexpensive. He's not like a glitch price or anything like that, but he's more than reasonable, especially for a guy who overall projection is top projected center. You know, Whiteside probably a close second. But when it comes to playing against Vooch, and I think I know why. When it comes to playing against Vooch, guys do really well, and I think it's because this year I watched a crap ton of basketball, and I realized that some guys play basketball all the time, and Vooch is one of those guys. He plays in the European League, and then so and then preseason and everything, he plays a lot of minutes all the time. So I think as a result of that, his defense, first of all, he's just not interested. And then second of all, he just doesn't have the energy because by the time the regular season starts, he's exhausted. So I think Drummond is in a great spot tonight. Not even good, but great.
Who else do you like? Do you like Whiteside up there too? Expensive?
Yeah, I like Whiteside too. I think I don't have Whiteside in my lineups only because on DraftKings, I think Drummond is a crazy value. And then on FanDuel, I'm sticking with my Steven Adams, Enes Kanter pairing. So it's just odd man out sort of thing with Whiteside. But yeah, I mean, he played 31 minutes last time. The guy had 18 points and 14 rebounds. I mean, as long as he keeps his head on straight, he's going to be in a good spot.
Who else do you like?
You mentioned Jonas Valanciunas.
Oh, yeah. Love it.
Man, that dude. The only reason why nobody's talking about him is because Anthony Davis went hand.
Yep.
He was phenomenal.
Nobody had him either. That's why no one's talking about him. No one realized he had a good game.
Nobody had him, dude. The guy's $6K on FanDuel. $6K. So, I'm hoping that people will just kind of like opt for Drummond or opt for Whiteside or something like that. But man, Valanciunas is a stud, man. He's going to be in my lineups tonight for sure. Also, Miles Turner, who I was preaching about last time.
Yes.
Good call. That was great, and overtime didn't hurt either. I think I'm off of him tonight, not because of talent or anything like that, because I think he's still just the tip of the iceberg is what we saw. But I think the other guys, in terms of value and expected production, he just doesn't make the cut. But in a tournament, you could do a lot worse.
Yeah, you mentioned Steven Adams too earlier, how you paired Kanter and Steven Adams together.
Yeah.
To me, I think that Steven Adams is a really good cash game play today. He doesn't have the same upside that some of these other guys have, but he's super consistent when you look back to the end of last year. And then I've talked about in our previous shows and stuff how well he did in the playoffs and everything. I think he's at a higher level of play now that he's not going to drop off from. So I like Steven Adams quite a bit. He might even actually end up in my cash game lineup.
He's in my cash game lineup for FanDuel, for sure, because he's the reason why OKC beat San Antonio in the playoffs, period. Mm-hmm. So he earned my respect, and he played 35 minutes last game. That 16 shots. Yeah, I'll take that. So his usage rate was like 22%. It's probably like the highest it's ever been. So that he can sustain that. That's not like some fluky thing. So
did you see much of the Houston game or no?
I didn't see a ton of it. I saw some of it. I ended up finding it on YouTube and replaying some of it. So I did see some of it, but not nearly as much as I wanted to. Capella is a guy that I was kind of high on before, who I still like him on FanDuel as well, as a matter of fact. His price is pretty nice. He threw up 16-9 or 16-10 or something pretty respectable. I remember it being like just shy of a double-double, whatever the number was. but it was pretty respectable. So I think he's going to have to grow into that role now that Dwight Howard is gone, but I do like him.
So that was the reason I brought it up is I didn't see a ton of that game, but I knew that he was going to be a fairly popular option among sharp players because of the high pick and roll that Harden was going to be running with him, right? And I was curious if he was going to get some of those dump offs from Harden, because Harden typically is a guy that's really selfish in the pick and roll and will almost always come off of that pick and look to either shoot or drive. Rarely would he dump it off, but we also saw him run a bunch of pick and roll with a guy that he didn't like at all in Dwight Howard. So maybe with Clint Capella, we're going to see some opportunities for him. Just looking at the box score and not watching that game because I was filming the NFL podcast, I see that he had 11 attempts. So that's encouraging. He made 8 of those attempts. He's in play for me today. I think this is a little bit better matchup than going against Timothy Mozgov, a guy that I have some respect for defensively as a rim protector, defensive guy. So Clint Capella is a guy that you can use with James Harden. I think that's a pretty nice pairing, and he's super cheap too on FanDuel. So another guy that I think people are going to prefer to use in cash games and stuff. I don't think he's the safest option, but there's some upside there. Also, just wish he would play some more minutes too. He's only good for 25 to 28 minutes.
Yeah, because he played like 26 minutes, and I think it's something that eventually he's going to get eased into. I think he can easily, as the weeks go on, he'll break 30. Because like last year, his minutes were so sporadic. It was basically, when Dwight Howard was hurt, he was playing center. Sometimes he was playing the 4, and then sometimes he was splitting with Montejunas, and so this is his time. I think he's a young dude who has a lot of promise, and I think just gotta keep an eye on him. He'll be ready soon.
What else do you like?
Let's see. Man, I was disappointed with Brook Lopez, but I think that was just like I said before, nobody on that team got hardly any minutes really. I think he got like 24, something really like disappointing. It's just one of those things with a team like that. You can't really when sometimes they'll get blown out and sometimes they won't. So you kind of have to just cross your fingers. One guy who is falling into the Dion Waiters / Harrison Barnes, I'm not sure if I can believe it yet, camp, is Roy Hibbert.
Yeah,
I really hate that guy. I'm just going to tell you, he's really burned me probably more than any other player in sports, period. Just because when we were kids, we had a saying where a guy was tall and just didn't do anything. You say he was big for nothing. And he seems like he was just big for nothing. I mean, he just didn't really do much of anything, but, new environment, just like those other guys. I'm going to give him a chance. The only thing with him is even if he plays well, I think it's going to be short-lived. The only reason why he was really in there was just to kind of hold things down until Cody Zeller came back. Mm-hmm. And Cody Zeller came back, and he actually played pretty well. So I think whatever performance he has is going to be a short-lived engagement. But, if you want to throw him in a tournament lineup, knock yourself out.
I have him listed as a tournament play. I had a buddy bring him up to me as a guy that he was going to be using, and I said that, hey, it looks great, matchup looks great and everything. I'm just concerned the guy's only going to play 20 minutes, So we saw over, the last years of his career here that Roy Hibbert doesn't play a ton of minutes. All of a sudden he shows up with 32 minutes in his last game. It's like, well, that, that's like 50% more production.
Yeah,
and he actually just had a huge game. So Hibbert caught me a little bit off guard just because of the minutes mainly.
Oh yeah, I think he caught everybody off guard, and even people looking at it are like, "Man, that is an outlier." I mean, I'm kind of, and I feel really bad about this as well because I know I'm going to regret it. But I'm kind of trying to find ways to talk myself into rostering him, and so far the best thing that I've come up with is, okay, if he's going up against Whiteside, they're going to need him in there as like a bigger body, maybe. I mean, that's the best I got, and which is kind of sad. But hey, I mean, at this point, it's like what's the worst that could happen? I could not cross off KCP and have him go off, so right now I'm more
scared of Hibbert than KCP, but
yeah, me too, right? So KCP is I'm not worried. That's the least of my worries. So
the more he comes up, the more likely he is to go off because we just keep on bashing him. But yeah, we're like a few minutes over. I want to give you some time and myself some time to build some lineups here. So I did want to ask you about at least one more guy though. Rudy Gobert. We know that Derek Favors is expected to play tonight. One reason that we project Rudy Gobert for success in the opener and everything is that he gets additional opportunities down in the post without Favors there. So that does ding him a little bit for me. I don't love this matchup for him either. That said, I do still think he's in play because of the step that he has taken in the off season in his offensive game. I think that he is a much better player than people realize, a much more well-rounded player than people realize, but extremely a tournament guy for me. Like I'm not even thinking about him in cash or anything. But yeah, your thoughts on Gobert and any final guys before we get out of here?
I agree with you 100% on Gobert. I think there was a stretch where Gobert, I guess it was last year, where he was just killing it, and people have it in their mind that that's what he's supposed to be doing. I think at a certain point, maybe even at the end of this season, he can reach that and maybe even surpass that. So I got high hopes for him. I think as far as tonight goes, he's a tournament option, but I'm not using him only because last game he played 41 minutes. No problem with that. But he only took 7 shots. I got a problem with that, especially with no Derek Favors. So with Favors back, I'm not optimistic that all of a sudden he's going to have 14 field goal attempts. He might, but I'm not willing to roster him and roll the dice on that. So as far as tonight goes, that's why I'm not on him.
Yeah, I mean 7 to 10 I'll take from Gobert just because of everything else he does in terms of rebounds and the block up side and everything. And we actually saw him get to the line quite a bit in the preseason. And he at one point he was shooting like 90% free throws too, which that's not sustainable. But the fact that he has improved his free throw shot is obvious. Like he's gonna have a much better season than people realize, I think. But yeah, anyone else? Or are we good?
Let's see. From a center standpoint, I think we mentioned pretty much everyone. Valanciunas, Drummond. I think other guys that I had on my list that just didn't quite make the cut. I had Andrew Bogut and I had Thompson on there as far as FanDuel values, but they didn't make it. I'm basically using Steven Adams and cash on FanDuel, and I'm going to go back to the well for Capella in terms of value on FanDuel for tournaments. So can't roster everybody. So those are the dudes.
Sounds like we're going to have similar lineups. You and I will be running the optimizer in the next 20, 30 minutes or so, probably see what it spits out. Hopefully, I'm hoping I can stick to my guns here with Westbrook and Harden instead of pivoting to Anthony Davis, but we'll see what happens.
One quick last thing with regards to optimizer, since we're talking about center. Sure. I'm going to just throw this name out because I'm going to have to I'm going to let everybody else do their own research on this guy. I'm not going to give a recommendation or not. Optimizer loves Justin Hamilton at center on DraftKings. So
Price is that
y'all do with that what you will. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
We'll see how much people trust the optimizer.
Tonight is a leap of faith, man. With KCP and Justin Hamilton up there, they got Solomon Hill in there.
He had a good game. His first game out, 19 points, but I don't know, man. Yeah.
We'll see. Check for Twitter because we're gonna see.
I have 0 Justin Hamilton tonight, just so everyone knows. But hey,
I got 0. I got not a whiff. At least not unless something comes up and the optimizer starts talking to me and saying, "Look, man, trust me," But for now,
look, it's gonna be all right. Just put Justin Hamilton. We need like an Alexa version of the optimizer. Like we need a Alexa so that we can talk to the optimizer and ask it questions, and
that's what we need.
Ask how confident it is. And all right, man. I appreciate you taking the time to do this with me, man. Sorry, we went a few minutes over. I'll usually let you get out of here on time so you can work on your lineups during this time. But
man,
appreciate everyone tuning in. Thad, final words for the people.
If I do use the optimizer lineup and win a GPP with Justin Hamilton, I'm calling China, because that's the only place I'm going to be able to get a Justin Hamilton jersey, because they ain't got none in America. I'm calling China, and I'm going to have one personally made, and I will wear it on the show. So we'll see. Like I said, we'll see.
I will not be playing Justin Hamilton, but I hope I can win by my GPPs with the lesser known Andre Drummonds of the world. So we'll see what happens, but we will catch you guys next time. I think that we might actually show up on Saturday, so keep an eye out for that. Pay attention to Twitter, and maybe we'll do a Saturday show for you guys. But catch you guys next time. Thank you.